With my heart thundering, I bolted back to the roof as fast as lightning and hurled myself from the roof. Using my prior climbing skills, I tucked my legs in and rolled across the grass. I only sustained a few minor bruises. I ran around the side of the house, up the stairs, and back into my room just as I heard the great hall open. I heard Lombard's thundering footsteps as he climbed the stair and approached the door. The door opened, and Giant's eyes met mine. "Good to see your evening was a relaxing one, friend." I shrugged and said, "I've had better. I had a strange nightmare. Really messed with my head. How did your ritual go?" Playing dumb with him as best as I could. Lombard nodded. "All was well. The congregation is eagerly awaiting this Sunday celebration. Enjoy your rest, friend." I could still see little bits of hastily wiped away gore clinging to his mask. Lombard shut the door as I heard the rest of the worshippers coming into the entrance hall. I sat and pondered my situation. I was trapped in this godforsaken place for one more week, until they decided to kill me. 1 week to discover what was really going on here. 7 short days to plan my escape. The next morning, I woke up early and ran off to the library, thinking that it would be a good place to learn some information. The place had a wealth of books, everything from War and Peace to Pat the Bunny. I wandered the endless shelves until I reached the back corner of the room. All that sat on the last dusty shelf was an old book with a leather cover. Nothing about it caught my eye, save for the title, The Book of Sekra. Remembering the mysterious name from the horror of last night, I snatched up the scripture. I sat at the desk in my room and flung open the ancient volume. Before me sprawled mounds of text in Old English. Though it was in English, it was still difficult to understand as I trudged through chapters of sacrifice and lore. I found not much beyond useless gibberish about ceremonies, a few of which I recognized. The method in which one is to fasten a goat's head to their own, and a full-page print of a slender woman sitting on a throne, with what looked like blood spattered around her mouth. Below it read, "Sekra, Her Holiness." I returned the book to the library, and made a decision to scour the grounds. Seeing as there was no way I could budge the padlock on the concrete shack, I made my way to the chapel. The door slid open easy enough, and inside what was appeared to be a graveyard for old boxes and furniture. After searching for a few hours, I found nothing of interest amongst the stacks of rotting wood. The schoolhouse next door yielded similar results. A few desks sat in simple rows with a teacher's desk, with a plaque bearing the name Master Lombard. Nothing else. Feeling defeated, I emerged from the building when something caught my eye. In the grass at the door sat a shining padlock. My heart leapt into my throat, and I sprinted towards the shack. I reached for the iron handle of the door, when it suddenly sprang open. A short, stubby man emerged quickly, shutting the door. He noticed me, and pushed his back against the door and spoke. No, boy, don't go in there. This place is not for the outsiders. Turn back around, boy. Go back to your room, lest I call for the headmaster." I sighed, and grudgingly returned to the house. Though I was distraught over this defeat, I returned to my bed and met sleep with open arms. During the following days, I felt my sanity slipping away, and I slowly came to grips with my fate. I stayed in bed most of the days, refusing to eat, and trying to relive as many happy memories as I could before the inevitable bloodletting on Sunday. Several times during my stay, I had seen people running for the woods, but they were most immediately apprehended by groups of men clad in red cloaks. I feared the same thing would happen to me, and decided against making a run for it. Eventually pulling myself up on Saturday night, I thought about my situation once more. Clasping my hands together, I contemplated how I could possibly survive. By the time I shut my eyes, I had summoned my last sheds of bravery, and constructed a plan with a mental image of the house so I would know my best route to take. Shutting my plans away, and taking a deep breath, I surrendered myself to my subconscious. I rose late on Sunday afternoon, unfitting for one's final day on earth, but the inevitability of death weighed on me and kept me in bed. Lombard into the room around 6 o'clock. "Are you ready to leave us, friend?" We are making preparations for the ceremony now. When you are ready, please approach the painting at the other side of the second floor. Slide the painting to the right, and it should reveal a staircase. The staircase leads to my chambers. I need to perform the finishing touches for the farewell. I quietly nodded as the door closed. For a few moments, I sat and considered my plans. Sitting, sweating, and breathing heavily, I made my decision. I snatched one of the pencils from the desk drawer and slid it into my right boot. Following the giant's orders, I climbed the hidden staircase and entered a large circular room. The walls were lined with bookcases with a massive desk resting in its center. On the desk sat piles of papers and a typewriter. Moonlight flooded in from a window above it all. Lombard greeted me with a hearty laugh. He told me to remove all of my clothing except for my pants. I obliged and slowly inched toward him as I began unlacing my work boots. My left sock and boot sat on the floor next to me, and I began to work at my right. Glancing behind me, I saw Lombard looming in anticipation. I smirked and slowly slid the pencil from my boot. Without hesitation, I jabbed the pencil with all of my might and drove it into the Titan's stomach. Lombard buckled from the strike and dropped to his knees. I heard blood gargling in his throat. I snatched the typewriter from the desk, slid it across, and smashed it across Lombard's face. The headmaster collapsed to the ground in a pool of his own blood. Turning, I was about to make my way out of the room, when I heard quiet laughter emanating from behind me. I spun around to see a bloodied Lombard rising from the carpet. His mask was now distorted and blood-soaked. You, friend, are smarter than the average fool we drag off to this place. I gritted my teeth. I'm leaving this place. I know what happened a week ago. Now tell me what really goes on here. Lombard chuckled. As you wish. What I told you about our history that morning was in fact true, though there are a few things that I left out to keep you under my thumb. Those two cousins who founded the town are closer to us than you think. One of them was my great-grandfather, and the other was yours. Medicine was no longer working to drive away the blight, and my ancestor, the great visionary that he was, decided to turn to other means of treatment. He found an old book amongst what he had found sightseeing in old countries. You seem to be familiar with it, which outlined how to give praise to an ancient goddess, Sakura. In exchange for a human life, Sakura would save another. We soon began using her divine will to save the community. However, your great-grandfather, blinded to reality by his morals, left the village. Just before the birth of his child, he made a vow to Dialis, the brother and polar opposite of the glorious Sakura, god of mortality and justice, that his bloodline would be forever devoted to the eradication of our order. This whole ordeal has been our effort to destroy the one human that can destroy us, and end the bloodline once and for all. I shook my head at all of the story and asked, So all of this was planned. How much of this is a plan? How long have you people been trying to do me in? I shall get to that in a moment. But here, reveal a secret you will truly enjoy. Normally, one of your blood could cause a member of our order with an aura as dark as mine to drop dead with a single touch. I took this into account when dealing with you. I've been nullifying your power with the one thing that will weaken it: human flesh and human blood. I went white at Lombard's statement. He began to laugh even harder. That's right, friend. I have personally slipped a bit of human into each of your meals since you got here. You never even knew. Oh, your ancestors would be proud of you. Little did he know, I hadn't eaten in days. I flung my hand out and grasped Lombard's wrist. Wrenching down, I felt a texture similar to squeezing down on raw meat. The giant roared as droplets of liquefied flesh dripped onto the floor. I apparently still had some power. He roared with pain and anger. I continued to twist and yank with my vice-like grip. I felt the crunching and oozing of now gelatinous bone pulling away from the muscle. Suddenly, I jerked with all of my might and gripped onto Lombard's severed hand as the rest of him fell to the ground in a wreathing heap. Lombard clutched his bloody stub. "I see you wisened up to my trickery. Clever man you are. No matter. You will not leave this place alive. I will see to that." I shouted to him. "You will never kill me, you monster. As soon as I escape, I'm taking Elizabeth and getting as far away from this town as we can. You will never be able to find us." Lombard began his hoarse laughter again. "You will never be safe again, friend. Even when you think you are the most protected, we will be there, watching you. We will never forget. Not even with that girl of yours, you're safe. Wait till you hear that tale. Surely you noticed how your emotions distorted when you were close to here. You should know we took the liberty of turning her into a tool of sorts. We altered her mind to force you into awakening the ancient blood in your veins in order to drive you apart and into the arms of the Circle. She was one of the most instrumental tools in our plot. She was such a naive girl. What a fool. Pretty, too." I lost it. I flung at my captor once again, and pressing my boot into his chest, I wrapped my hands around his horns and began to pull. Lombard screamed with pain as I pulled at the mask. I felt each stitch pop as I wrenched upward. The Titan began to flail his hand and stub at my body. But every contact with my skin resulted in a feeling akin to a man punching a slab of molten metal. With one last ferocious pull, I felt the final stitch tear, and I flung the headdress against the wall, resulting in a splatter of blood and teeth. Lombard's body flailed, and I ran to the door. His disfigured face writhed as he cried into the air, "I swear it, Robert Elm, you will never escape the hand of the Black Circle. You will die by my hand." I smirked at my handiwork. "We will see, friend." I promptly sprinted down the staircase and out of the silent room. My legs ached from the fight, but I shrugged off the pain and ran across the grass as fast as I could. As I passed by the great hall, I could hear shrieks of terror and sorrow. I chuckled at the reaction to what I had caused. "I will never see that thing again," I muttered. I hurried myself to the concrete shack at the edge of the property. I figured now was a good enough time to see if I can get into that mysterious building. Halfway through the field, I turned to see hooded men with torches beginning their search for me. I quickened my pace. I was able to reach the unlocked door while the search party went off to investigate the barn and tool shed. Taking advantage of my moment of safety, I slowly slid the door open and saw a rather anticlimactic sight. The room was dimly lit by a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Several barrels stood around the corner and walls. A workbench was fastened to the wall next to another large metal door at the end of the room. Just as I got to investigating the room, I heard footsteps from behind the second door. My heart skipped a beat, and I had no choice but to conceal myself in one of the barrels. I slid back the lid, and was met with a horrendous stench that caused me to gag uncontrollably. I climbed into what felt like runny swamp sludge and held my breath. As soon as I did, the old man I saw earlier pushed the door open and hobbled into the room, holding what looked like a corpse slung over his shoulder. He approached the workbench and flung the body onto the table. To my horror, he began meticulously working at the body with an assortment of knives, cutting and slicing with surgical precision. The entrance to the room opened again, and a group of hooded searchers entered, and asked the old man if they had seen a man, matching my description anywhere. He insisted that he had not, and after scanning the room for a few seconds, the men left as quickly as they came. I waited stiffly in the barrel, holding my breath as best as I could, taking in brief sips of air and staying as quiet as possible as not to reveal my location. Suddenly, I heard the old man mutter to himself, "Yes, you will cook up real nicely, won't you?" He let out a quiet chuckle. I gagged again, half with sickness and half with shock. I had caught the man's attention. Deciding it was time for me to make my move, I silently lifted the lid and slid from my soaked form onto the dark floor. Fear gripping tight, lid in hand, I raced toward the stunned butcher and struck him on the head with a hunk of wood. He dropped towards the floor, and with a dull thud, I snatched the blade from his hand and made a dash for the door, but not before looking at myself under the dim light. My stomach turned as I saw my entire body soaked in a heavy coating of blood and chunks of meat. It drizzled and pooled on the floor. It sickened me. Holding back the urge to vomit, I nudged the door open, revealing a dark tunnel, far more organic than anything I had seen in quite a while. All was silent except for the drips of blood from my skin and clothes. I quickened my pace as I heard someone shouting far behind me. I held my breath, ignored my looming claustrophobia, and soldiered on through the darkness. The near-endless tunnel finally opened into a small candlelit room. It was only about 12 feet across, with an arcing ceiling. I had very little time to examine my surroundings, but when I entered the room, I saw a hooded worshipper with his back facing me, holding what appeared to be an old hunting rifle. Though at first my heart raced, as I anticipated my own death, I was stunned to realize that he was unaware of my presence. Seizing the moment, I lashed out at the crown over his head with my stolen weapon. The man let out a quick yelp, fell to the ground, and lay motionless as blood pooled around his hood. I let the knife rest in his skull and snatched up the firearm. "Here's something I can use," I mumbled to myself as I slung it over my shoulder. On the floor, I noticed a small metal hatch. Seeing nowhere else to go, and remembering the search party on my tail, I opened it and descended into the ladder that it opened up to. The ladder met the ground in an alcove on the shore of a small pond. Near the ladder, I found plastic tubs filled with things like shoes, backpacks, dog collars, amongst other things. Remembering the room, the old man, and the cult's cannibalistic tendencies, the sight of all these tattered belongings was bittersweet. Grabbing one of the largest packs I saw, a pile of metallic objects out of the corner of my eye. Bikes! Taking a deep sigh, I picked up the newest looking one and rode off through the woods as fast as the wheels would spin into the night. After trudging onward through the woods, and subsisting off of some trail mix I found in the bag I took, I finally arrived in town. Needless to say, my friends and neighbors were amazed by my return. However, I knew I could not stay and chat. Walking up to my house, Elizabeth rushed out to meet me. I didn't even look at her. I continued inside, gathering my belongings and climbing into my car, with Elizabeth chasing me the whole way, asking me what was wrong and where I had been. I ignored her. She looked at me with a face of sorrow that I knew was just a mask, and when our eyes met, I could tell she knew the answers to her questions. I backed out of the driveway and made my way for the highway. I never saw that town or Elizabeth again. Many years passed. I traveled town to town, but every time they found me, they always found me. For years I've been running from them, but I doubt I will ever escape their grasp. I've found safe haven in this place for 12 years, but I fear that they know where I am, and they're drawing near once again. I'm too old to run anymore, my friend. Just too old now. The bartender stared in astonishment. "So that's why you've been so solitary?" "Yes. I fooled myself into thinking that the more I kept to myself, the safer I would be." The bartender stuttered. "And you're drinking the sacrifice, the liver thing. Is that why?" The storyteller let out a hearty laugh. "Yes, when they do find me and bite into my flesh, I want them to choke on it." The barkeep laughed grimly, and the old man noticed that the moon was low. He stood and dusted off his pants. "I'd best be leaving now. The sun will be here soon." It was relieving to finally share this story with someone. The bartender smiled. "It was a joy hearing it. Have a good rest of the night, Mr. Elm." Robert nodded and stared at the door. He took the subway home like he had every night coming home from the bar, shaking his hands to keep the cold away. After a short ride, he made his way into his apartment building and climbed the stairs. He took a brief sigh and slowly opened his door. After hanging up his coat and scarf on the coat hanger and taking a seat in an armchair near the door, he looked off into the darkness. Something caught his eye. It was a gargantuan figure with pale green eyes watching him from the shadow of the apartment. Slowly, the shape plodded forward to reveal a grotesque face with a wicked, mangled grin. Robert Elm sat motionless as he looked up at the being. The thing spoke to him in a devilish, yet labored groan. "Good evening, traveler,"